Hello and welcome to Code Tutorials. In this video, we're going to cover the setup and some of the things you can do with the Qi theme. Namely, we'll go through the global theme options, which you can use to set up and adjust your site. During the course of the video, you'll be able to see the effect these options have and the combinations you can use them in. We're in for a thorough overview, which will leave you ready to start using the Qi theme and tackle making your own site with it. Right now, we're on the page dedicated to the Qi theme. If you haven't done so already, you can download the theme from here, or you can install it from your admin dashboard like you would any other theme or plugin found on WordPress.org. Okay, here you can preview all of the Qi theme's demos, and there are 100 of them that you can use for free, so you're bound to find something that will fit your business needs and taste in design. As we cover the theme's options, I'll be using one of the demos to show you the options effects, and it's this one called Law Firm. I have it open here so we can take a peek. This is the law firm's homepage. I'll be using it and other pages to showcase the effects different global theme options can have on your site. As you can see, the page shows off some high-end design. This is accomplished in large part by using the Qi Addons for Elementor plugin, as most of the elements on this page are built with it. And while we invite you to explore it and check out the various widgets in the Qi Addons collection, most of what we'll be focusing on today will be stuff you can do for your site as a whole, rather than focusing on a single page and its elements. Still, the things we will do will have a visible effect on the front end, and I will be showing it to you using this page. Alright, now that we've seen that, let's go to the WordPress dashboard. The menu on the left-hand side includes all kinds of options, some of which are provided by Qi theme. The ones I want to draw your attention to are here at the bottom. One is the Qi Addons for Elementor, the plugin I mentioned, which is responsible in large part for different elements on the demos pages. The Qi Addons are a collection of 60 free widgets that you can add to your WordPress site to display and style different types of content. The second thing I wanted to mention in this menu is the Qode Essential add-ons. This is where you'll find the welcome page, which contains information and links to helpful resources, the import section, which you can use to import the demo you're choosing, and the options section, which will be our focus in this video. I'll open it now. This is where you can find all the global theme options. We'll start with the general section. By the way, all these options under Qode Essential add-ons are for setting some site-wide rules and determining things concerning the overall style and layout of your pages. It's important to remember that these options aren't used for adding content. They simply allow us to set how the pages, and our site in general, will look. The things we set here will apply to the entire site. However, you will be able to make exceptions using the options within individual pages. But, not to drift off point, we're looking at the general section. This contains settings that allow us to adjust the look of our pages, starting with the page background color. I'll be showing you what this looks like using this page from the demo I imported. This is the About page, and I changed it slightly from the original demo setup for the purposes of this video. Now, if we look through this page, we can see that its background is white. You can see it here and here as well. The exception is this section, which has a different background for itself. I'm going to use this section background color on the rest of the page as well. To do that, I need the page background color option, and I'm going to type in the appropriate hex code. If you prefer though, you can use this slider to select the color you like. However, as I have a pretty specific shade in mind, I'll just add the hex code for it, and save changes. Then refresh. And now I have the same color as my background throughout. Keep in mind, I'm showing you this on one page, but the color will appear on all your site pages as it's set in the global theme options. Okay, I'll clear this now. And save. I'll also refresh the page to check that it's back to how it was. Okay, the white is back. Our next option is for setting a page background image. If you'd like an image instead of a color as your background, you can click here to upload it. I'll use an image with a pattern, and then go here to select it. By the way, you can see here that the image I'm using is 1164 by 644 pixels. Given that my screen width is 1920 pixels, this image won't be full screen. However, there are options for overcoming that, and I'll be explaining them in a moment. For now, select and save changes. Then refresh. And there, this Art Deco style pattern is my image. About here is the cutoff point for the image width. But because it's a pattern, the entire page is seamlessly covered, as you can see. So by default, the page background image you pick will be repeated both width and lengthwise until it covers the whole page. The option responsible for that is the page background image repeat, and its default setting has the image repeating. The other settings available here are no repeat, let's see that one, save, and refresh. There now. My image is displayed in its actual dimensions with no repetition to create the wallpaper effect we previously saw. And if we look down the page, we just have the white background, as the image I'm using is shorter than the page length. Let's see what other settings we have. There's repeat, and this is actually the default setting you get when you upload the background image. Let me show you. Refresh. And there. This is the wallpaper look we had at the start. My entire page is covered. The image repeats along both the X and the Y axis. However, you can also pick just one direction for it to repeat. Let me show you what the repeat X setting looks like. Save and refresh. With this setting, the image will repeat along the X axis, that is to say along the width of the screen. So it covers the top part of my page. But if we scroll down, we can see that the rest of the page background only shows the white color background, as the image doesn't repeat in that direction. So repeat X is repetition along the width of the page and no more. If you want your image to repeat along the length of the page, then you can use the repeat Y setting. Let's see that one. And refresh. Now if we look down the page, we can see the image repeating downwards, and there's space left over on the side because the image I'm using is narrower than my screen. Okay, these are all the choices you have if you want your background image to repeat. I'll return this to default. After that, we have the page background image size option. I'll set contain for my image size. These settings are easier to explain while showing you the effect. And refresh. And this is it. The contain property stretches your image to fit the width of the page while keeping its aspect ratio. Because I still have the repeat on by default, my whole page background is covered. And the second setting for this option is cover. Save changes and refresh. Now when we look, we can see the image is stretched to cover the page with no regard to its aspect ratio. With this setting, the image will be stretched or cut off to make it fit its container. So use this one only if you have an image that will still look good when stretched out. Okay, that's it for the page background image size. I'll set this back to default. After this, we have the page background image position. To show you this, I'll first set the repeat option to no repeat, and then I'm going to type in top right in this field. The input you can use here can be right, left, top, bottom, center, and any combination of those, such as top right. Alright, save changes. Then go to the page and refresh. And now the image is here. It's still at the top, but it's positioned on the right side instead of the left. And since I set it not to repeat, the rest of the page is simply white. Let's see what another combination of settings might look like. I'll put center for the position, and I'll switch the repeat to repeat Y. And I'll also set the page background image attachment, which defines how the image will behave on scroll, to fixed. Save and refresh. Now my image is in the center of the page and it repeats all the way down. And the image attachment option, which I set to fixed, is keeping the image immobile. It stays nailed down, so it seems like the content is scrolling over it rather than with it. The image attachment option has another setting, and that is scroll. If we switch to that one, let's see how it would look. Refresh. Now scrolling across the page will have the background image moving with the rest of the content. By the way, scroll is the default setting, as the fixed attachment property of content images doesn't perform all that well on mobile devices, just on computers. So I'll set this back to default and reset the other options while I'm at it. Okay, then save. And I'll go to refresh the page to make sure it's clear now. Alright. Okay, our next option is the page content padding. This lets us set a sort of buffer of empty space all around our page content. This is particularly useful for content that's stretched from one page end to the other, meaning its full width. Then you can use the page content padding to give your content a bit of space so it's pushed away from the edges. The values are entered like this, clockwise from the top. Since I want to enter only 50 pixels for the left side, I first need to set 0 pixels for all the others, as I don't want additional paddings there. And save. Then refresh. And now if we look here, it's clearest in this colored section. There is 50 pixels worth of padding on the left side of my page content. And since this is just for the content, the header and footer remain undisturbed. We can also see that these counters at the top are much closer to the header. They no longer have the top padding that was there by default. My setting 0 pixels now overrode that. Okay, we've seen how the page content padding option works. Let me clear it now. There. Next, we have something similar for the page content padding mobile. It does practically the same thing as the page content padding option, but it applies only to how your site is displayed on mobile phones. I'll set similar values to show you, and save changes. Now I have this tab where I've opened the same About page I've been using, only this one is displayed in mobile phone dimensions thanks to native browser DevTools. And if we scroll down, this is what the page looks like on mobile. I'll refresh it now so we can see the padding I set. Right away, we can see that the counter is pushed closer to the header since it's lost its default top padding. Additionally, we can see there's more space now on the left as it no longer matches the right side. And scrolling further down shows us those 20 pixels of padding quite clearly. Alright, let me go back to the options and clear this. Okay, then we have the page wrapper padding. It's somewhat similar to the page content padding. We still have room to input 4 values to limit the spread or stretch of our content. However, with the page wrapper padding, the values will create a wrapper, like a frame, around the content. This will make it more compact, while the values you set will determine the width of that wrapper frame. I'll demonstrate and set 20 pixels. If you add only one value like this, it will apply to all 4 sides. Save and refresh. Now when we look at this page, we can see that it has, from header down, 20 pixels as a wrapper around it. And this goes all the way down the page. And we have the same thing with the page wrapper padding mobile, where the values we enter will affect only the site display on screens that are 1024 pixels wide or less. I'll set 20 pixels here as well. Save and refresh. And there. The same 20 pixel wide wrapper can be seen on mobile as well, starting from the header and all the way down, present on the entire page and all the other pages too if they are viewed on mobile. Okay, let me go back and clear the wrapper settings. There. Following that, we have this option for boxed layout. It's set to no by default. By enabling it, we'd put our page content in grid. Essentially, this would give our pages a boxed-in look instead of having them stretched full width across the screen. Refresh, and there. Everything on my page is now in this, let's call it box. And my content is now limited to that box, which is limited to the width of the grid. If you choose to use a boxed layout, there are several options you can use to customize it. The first of these options is the boxed background color. You can pick a color by dragging the slider or by typing in a hex code. I'll add the hex code for the color I used earlier. OK, save changes. And then go to the page and refresh. And there. Now the background visible on the sides of the content is showing the new color I set. Besides the color, let me clear this, you can also set the space to the side of the content to show a pattern. This is done by uploading an image. I'll use the one from before. There it is. Select image, save changes, and refresh the page. Now this background behind the content is wallpapered with the image I set as its pattern. And as I scroll, you can see that the image has the fixed property that we encountered earlier. If you want to change that, you have the pattern behavior option. Let me switch it to scroll so we can see how that would look. And refresh. Now as I go through the page, we can see that the image moves along with the rest of the content. So the content and the background pattern scroll together. Let's see this with a slight shift in settings. I'll return the pattern behavior to fixed, but at the same time I'll change the pattern size setting to cover and save changes. Refresh. And there we go. The image is immobile, but it's gotten stretched out so it covers the entire page background. Alternatively, we can set the pattern size to contain and save. Then refresh. The contain setting stretches the image width-wise, but it ensures the aspect ratio is capped so any gaps in background coverage are filled by the image repeating. So those are some of the option combinations you can make if you opt for a boxed layout. I'm going to turn this off now. There, and save. Then refresh. Okay, the page is back to how it was. The next thing we'll be looking at is the initial width of content. Basically, all our content, any elements that are not screen wide, are set in grid and have the maximum width that you can set. My content right now fits in a 1300 pixel grid, and that is the default grid width for the Qi theme. Every website can accommodate full width and grid content display. Using the initial width of content, you can change how wide your grid will be. Grids for desktop screens are usually between 1100 and 1300 pixels. With the Qi theme, you can select anything from 800 to 1400 pixels. I'll set 1100 so we can see what a narrower grid might look like. And refresh. The grid allows for less space, and this has forced my content to get more compact to fit. Okay, I'll put this back. After this, we have the option to enable a back to top button. I'll do that now and save changes. Let's first see how it looks by default. And I need to scroll down to make it appear. There, in the corner, we have this button that we can click and swiftly go back to the top of the page. The button itself is neatly styled. It has a square background with an arrow icon that changes colors on hover. If we want to change it, there are a few options to help us do so. For example, the back to top icon SVG path allows you to add an SVG to replace the default button icon. This is a great solution for anyone who wants a truly custom back to top button. However, if you just want to style the default button, you have these nifty options here, the back to top styles. They let you do things like change the color of the arrow icon outline using this option. You can pick using the slider or add a hex code, which is what I'll do. Instead of the default gray, I'll set a much darker shade. There. Then for the hover color, I'll add the beige color I've used before. This will be the fill color of the arrow icon which appears on hover. And I'll change the background color too. I'll make it the same beige as the hover color. And I'll match the background hover color to my initial arrow outline color. Copy and paste. There. Let's see how it turned out. Save and refresh. Now when the page loads, there's my button. And when I hover over it, there. Choosing the same color combination for the regular and hover colors made it so that the button on hover becomes an inverted mirror image of its normal display version. Of course, you're entirely free to combine completely different colors for your button if you prefer. Let's see what other changes you can make to the button. You can add a border. I'll set one now. I'll make the border color almost black. And for the border hover color, I'll use a bright red so we can easily spot the difference. After setting the color, we need to set a border width to make the border visible. I'll set 2 pixels. And let's see how that looks on the page. And refresh. And here we are now. The button has a dark border while displayed normally, and that border turns bright red when I hover over it. Now, there's one more option for the border, and that's the border radius. What it represents is, here, the rounding out of these corners. So you'd use the radius option to soften the angles that make up the button square. However, my angles aren't all that pointy to start with, which tells me my button has some radius set by default. You can turn that off by using the border radius option and setting 0 pixels here. While I'm here, I'll also change the icon size. As its name suggests, this option lets us adjust the size of the arrow icon on the button. I'm going to set 25 pixels here to get a bigger arrow. Now let's see how all these changes I've made look like. And before refreshing, I have my soft cornered button and this smallish arrow in it. Now refresh. And there, the arrow is quite a bit bigger now, and the button has turned into a perfect square. Those were our back to top styles. I'll disable the button now so it doesn't distract us as we explore the other options. And with this, we covered the general section of the global theme options, and we can move on to the logo section. Here we have settings that relate to the logo. To start from the top, we have the option for adjusting the logo height, which has 62 pixels set for it. If we take a look at the demo I'm using as a showcase, this is my logo and it is 62 pixels high. If I reduce that, let me show you, save, and refresh, the logo is noticeably smaller now to reflect this reduction in height. Next, we can add some logo padding. As with the previous padding options, input the values clockwise from the top. For my padding, just as an example, I'll set 0 pixels at the top, 0 on the right, 0 at the bottom, and 20 on the left, and save changes. Then refresh. And now we can see that my logo has shifted away from the left by the 20 pixels I set. Okay. After this, we have some settings for the logo image. Those are logo main, which is where you'd upload your logo image to replace the one from the demo. As a tip, the image you upload should be twice the size of the dimensions that it will be displayed in on the page. So if it will be displayed as 100 by 50 pixels, then the image you upload should be 200 by 100 pixels. And underneath this, we have the logo sticky option for uploading a logo image that will appear in the sticky header if you opt to use it. If you don't upload an image here, the one you set as logo main will be used for everything. Let me quickly show you what the sticky header looks like. I just need to restore these settings first. There. Okay. And then I need the header section in the options. And then the scroll appearance settings tab, where I'll switch the header behavior to sticky and save changes. Then refresh the page. I need to scroll a bit for the sticky header to appear, but when it does, we can see that the same logo I have as my main is shown here as well. And I didn't need to upload it separately under the logo sticky option. Okay, I'll set this back. And let's return to the section with the logo options. We have, in fact, two tabs within this section. The first is the header logo options, which we just covered, and the second is the mobile header logo options. We can see that the height set here is also 62 pixels. And if we look at my mobile site display, this is what it looks like. I'll set something smaller, like 42 pixels, and save. Then refresh, and here we are. The logo now is considerably smaller. The other thing you can do here is set a padding that will appear only when the logo and your site in general is viewed on mobile phones. For this, I'll set 20 pixels at the top and 0 for all the other sides. There. And the last option we have lets us upload a separate image for the mobile logo. That is, if you don't want to use the same image you picked for your logo main. Now let's see how the padding looks, and refresh. There. I have more space above my logo, the 20 pixels I set. But this has pushed my logo to shrink down further. That's because my header height is fixed. That's done with a separate option within the header section, but more on that later. For now, the point is that the padding you set will take up some of that fixed header height, which will force the logo to shrink to fit the leftover space. Even if I increase the mobile logo height, I'll return it to the default, and save, the logo will still need, refresh, to fit within the available space once the padding has taken up its portion of the header height. Okay, that's all we had in the logo section, so let me clear this and save the change. Our next section is the fonts, which, as the name suggests, is there to help you select and set up your site fonts. For starters, we have Google Fonts enabled, which gives you access to a selection with hundreds of different fonts. Underneath this, we can see the 3 fonts that my chosen demo is using. If you want to remove a font, you can do so by clicking here. And if you want to add a new one, you can do so by clicking on this button, and then you just select the font you want from the list here. Any fonts you add here will automatically become available for you to use on your pages. Okay, I'll erase this. Just a sec. There. Below this, we can pick the Google Font Weight and Google Font Style settings that we want to use on our site. You'll still be able to change this on the page and within specific elements. By default, the setting is for 400 regular, and keeping it as is a pretty safe bet. But if you have a particular weight that you prefer, setting it here will spare you from making the same adjustment a million times over when you do your page building. As for style, that depends on your site language, so I leave it up to you to decide which of these work for you. Simply tick the one you need and make sure to save changes. Okay, that's it for the font section. Next, we have the typography section. This is where you'll find options for setting anything to do with letters and their style on your site. So for starters, we have numerous tabs, each for a different HTML tag you can use. Everything from H1, heading 1, to the link and paragraph typography. The options within each tab are more or less the same, so I'll open H2 for my showcase as the demo page I'm using has a suitable heading to help me. This one. This is an H2 title. And when I start showing you the options, we'll be looking at this to see how the changes look. Okay, in terms of available options, we can change the title color. I'll remove the existing one and replace it with this orange one. Next, I'll use the font family option to pick a new font. Say this one. By the way, the font we have here by default is the one chosen in the font section. After that, I'll change the font size to 60 and the line height too. There. Then we have some more typography options such as letter spacing. Okay, and font weight. I'm changing the settings on these so we can see what difference they make. You, of course, will pick and choose from these options, you don't have to use them all. But I'll transform the text to uppercase and change the font style to italic. Then there are these link settings for the H2 title. Since mine is not linked and it's not particularly common practice to link H2s, I'll show you how these options work using another link later on. However, for margin top, I'll set 20 pixels. And I'll do the same for the margin bottom, 20 pixels. Then save changes. And refresh. The title is completely different now thanks to all the settings we made. And all the H2 titles across your site will now show this style. Alright, let me put back all the settings here since we saw how they look. I'll speed up a bit. And there. Save changes. Now, I promised to show you the options for links, so let's open up link typography. Please note, the settings here are for all your links, whether they are placed on an H2 title or some paragraph text. And the link I will be demonstrating these options on is... Let me refresh the page so we get the original title settings back. Okay, so I added a link to this page and it's here. These 3 words are the anchor text. Now, in terms of options we can change, there's the color. I'll set this orange one, for example, and I'll also change the hover color, so that's the one we see when we hover over the link. And I'll use this bright green. Before I make any other changes, let's see how these look. Save, and go to the page to refresh. Alright, now the link is easier to spot thanks to its new vibrant colors. So let's see what other options we have. There's the font weight. You can change it to any of these settings. I'll select bold 700 so we can see the difference. Then we can change the font style, and I'll make this one italic. Then the text decoration can be used to add a line to the text when it's viewed normally, as well as when it's viewed on hover. I'll leave the normal decoration be, but I'll add an underline to the hover decoration. Okay, save changes. And let's check the page. Refresh. There now. The link text is bold, italic, and when we hover over it, the underline decoration appears. Alright, let me go back and restore all these link typography settings to what they were originally. Just a sec. Alright, there. Save changes. So these were the typography options. The next ones in line are the header options. So this section contains all kinds of settings for the header. We have 3 tabs, and the first one is for the general settings. Within it, we can pick the header layout. The default one for my demo is standard. So in practice, that means my header, let me just refresh, my header has a logo on the left, a menu in the middle, although it's aligned to the right at the moment, and these 2 widgets on the right. And depending on the header layout you choose, you're going to get the appropriate options for modifying it. A lot of the options will be the same for all layouts, but some can be pretty specific. For the standard header, we can pick if the content will be in grid or not. I'll enable it so we can see the difference. And refresh. As we can see, setting the content to be in grid will automatically draw in your header content so it fits the grid width, which, if you recall, is 1300 pixels. So the arrangement is the same, it's just more compact. Okay, let me switch this off. There. Then we have the header height. For this demo, it's set to be 103 pixels. Let me show you what it might look like with 153 pixels for its height. Save changes and refresh. And here, the header has more space above and below its content thanks to its increase in height. Okay, I'll restore the original, just a sec. Okay. After this, we have the header side padding. That is actually this space here on the sides of the header content. Let's see it in practice. I'll change this to 80 pixels. Save changes, then refresh. And here, we can see that the space to the sides of the header content has grown larger. I'll put it back the way it was. There. Following this, we have the header background color. I'm going to change it so we can see the difference. There, and save changes. Then refresh. And here, the header shows the new color I set, which, as you can see, matched the section background below. Of course, you can set any color you like here. This is just an example. Let me put it back. Just a sec. And there we go. Next, we have the header border color. For this one, I'll set this red as an example. And after selecting a color, I need to set a width for the border to appear. Let's say 3 pixels. Save. And refresh. Right under the header, we have this red border. If you want to keep it, you can choose the border style you want to use. The default setting is actually solid, so we know how that one looks. But let's see the dashed style. Save. And refresh. There it is, a dashed border. And we have one more, dotted. Let's see that one now. Refresh. And this is what the dotted border looks like. Okay, I'll reset all these options now. Give me a moment. And there. After this, we have the menu position option. It's set to the right, and that got our menu positioned on the right in the header. If you like, you can switch it to the left. Let me show you what that will look like. Refresh. And there it is, next to the logo. By the same principle, you can set it in the center. But right now, I'd prefer we carry on. And to do that, I'll just save changes and then go to the page to refresh it. Now we can take a look at the next option, which affects the side margin of these widgets here. So for the header widget side margin, I'll set 50 pixels so we can see what that might look like. And refresh. Now when we look, we can see that there is a lot more distance between the widgets. This new gap corresponds to the 50 pixels I set. Okay, since we've seen how that works, I'll clear it. Now we come to the next section in these settings, and it concerns the top area. I'm going to turn it on now so we can see what it is. Save changes and refresh. Now here, the top area is this thinner band above the header, and it has some site content of its own. By the way, its style is suited to this demo, so it can look differently depending on your chosen demo. Now, in terms of the settings you can make to it, I want to start by showing you these for the border. That's this line here. And you need to scroll a bit for its settings, and here. The first option is for changing the top area border color. We can see that right now it's set to white. That's the hex code with 6 Fs. And underneath that, we can see that it has a border width of 1 pixel. And you can easily change this by setting a new color or setting a different pixel value for the width. Okay, now, let's take a look at the other options for the top area. There's the content in grid option. I'll enable it to show you how it looks. Just a sec. Refresh. There. All the top area content now fits the 1300 pixels I have for the grid. And this includes the border, as we can see. You can adjust this by adjusting the grid width or switch this to no to let your content stretch full width, which is what I'll do. And save. Then refresh. OK. The option after this is the content alignment. We have the default setting, which pushes the content to the edges. And we have the center setting, which, let me show you. Refresh. This setting pushes the content closer to the center. The reason why the content isn't even closer to the middle of the top area is because this area is divided into two columns, and the content is aligned to the center of each of those two columns. This is one column and this is the other. Okay, I'll restore this setting. Then we have the top area height option, which is set to 53 pixels. This is specific to my chosen demo. And I know this because we have a note here saying the default height is 40 pixels. I'll put in an even greater value, say 83 pixels. And then we can take a look at the effect this produces. Save and refresh. Here it is. The top area now takes up significantly more space. Give me a sec to put it back the way it was. Okay. Then we have the top area side padding. It works pretty much the same as the header side padding. Let me show you. I have 50 pixels and I'll set 80 instead. Save. And now when we take a look, there is more space to the outer sides of the top area content. Alright, I'll just restore this. 1 second. There. Following this, we have the top area background color option. I'll just set a new color so we can see how it might look. Say this one. Save. And refresh. There, my top area is now a completely different color. I'll restore the original now. Give me a moment. There we go. After this, we have the two border options we looked at earlier. The top area border color and the top area border width. There's also the border style option, but that one should be familiar from when we examined the header settings and its border. So moving on, the last option here is for the widget skin. This essentially colors the top area content, a bit like changing the font color. Right now it's set to white, and if we look at the page we can see what it looks like in practice. But besides white, we have two more settings here, default and light. I'm going to pick default so we can see how that one looks. And refresh. Okay, the background has nothing to do with this, it only refreshed to show an earlier change. But the widget skin, with the exception of the social icons, turned my content to a darker color. These three differ because you can set a color separately within each widget and then it would stay that color even if you change the global setting. However, the rest of the content reflects the change of setting for the widget skin. And when I hover over any clickable bits, the text practically melts into the background. That's because the default skin is dark. Generally, you should use dark skins when you have a light-colored background. It ensures you have a contrast that makes the content visible. For the same reason, the original skin was white because the background is dark. Now, there's one more widget skin to look at, light. Save. And refresh. There. The content is a bit lighter than with the default setting, but still more tinted than it was originally. And the social icons are still white. Since white was the original setting for this demo, I'll put it back now. Okay, there. And this was the last of the top area options. I'll go and disable this widget area since we're done with it. And save changes. Now, these were the options for the header layout I'm using, called standard. But there are other layouts you can choose, and I will be showing you what those are a bit later. For now, I'd like us to take a look at the main menu settings. The first option for the main menu is the drop-down position. To show you how the drop-down options work, I'm going to need to adjust my menu. So I need the Appearance Menus section to help me with this. Essentially, I need second-level menu items to get the drop-down. Since this is a matter of content, it's not something I can do within the global theme options, which is why we're here in the menu section. And since this is just a showcase, I'll drag this item a bit to the right, and now it's become a sub or second level item belonging to the About page. And save menu. Now let's refresh the page. And now when I look at the menu, the contact page is gone, but hovering over About gets us this drop down with the contact page inside it. So now I have a drop down item. And if you like, you can add more of these to your menu, that's up to you. But I'm just doing this to show you the global theme option called drop down position. Let me drag this over. Okay. Our first option, the drop-down position, lets us set a percentage of overlap between the actual menu and its drop-down portion. So this position right now, with the drop-down appearing just under the header, is the default setting of 100%, meaning everything is shown fully, there is no overlap. But if I set, for example, 76% and save changes, then refresh, now when we look at the menu, the drop-down has climbed up towards the first level menu items. Just as you can reduce this value, you can increase it. I'll put, say, 130% and save changes. Then refresh. Now when we look, the drop-down menu is significantly below the header. I'll clear this so we get the default setting back. Then we have a far more familiar option, the background color for the drop-down portion of the menu. I'm going to set, for example, this orange shade and save, then refresh. Now hovering over the menu reveals the drop-down with its new color. Other than that, we have one more drop-down option, and that is the drop-down box shadow. As you can see from this note here, you need to add several values that will define the shadow properties. Rather than coming up with something now, I'll just use the example properties here and paste. Then save changes and go to refresh the page. Now, when we look at the menu, the drop-down box has a light grey shadow all around it. Okay, that's it for the drop-down options. Let me restore the original values. There. Moving on, the next section is for the main menu typography, with options for the first level menu items at the top. We'll start by changing the colors. I'll set this orange as the menu item's color. Then for hover color, I'll set maybe green. And for the active color, I'll put red so they're all different. And save. I've picked distinct colors so you can more easily see which option impacts what. So orange is our menu item color. When we hover over something, we see the hover color, which is bright green. And finally, there is red, our active color, which denotes the page we're on. And as you can see, the active color stays the same even when you hover over it, while the others around it can and do change. And as I said, I chose bolder colors so we can see the difference, but you can choose something that will better match the palette of your chosen demo. Okay, other than the colors, we have the option to change the font family. I'll set this one, for example, and then adjust the font size. Okay, and the line height too. Then I'll add something for the letter spacing as well. Okay, and do the font weight too. Make it bold. Then for the other options, I'll set the text transform to lowercase. Change the font style to italic. Add the text decoration by setting an underline. And for the hover decoration, I'll add a line through. And I think that's that for now. We'll look at these three remaining options in a moment, but let's first see the results of all these changes I've made. Refresh the page, and there. I admit it clashes with the demo, but the point is to show you the effectiveness of the changes you can make. So we have the new font size and font weight and font style. There is also the underline that's there until we hover, and then it gets replaced with a line through. Now that we've seen that, let me explain the remaining options for the first level menu typography. The Draw Hover Active Text Decoration option lets us enable an animated effect for the line serving as the text decoration on hover. Enabling this will disable the regular text decoration, as you can see from this note here. So this, the underline in my case, will simply be ignored. Let me show you. I'll switch this to yes and save changes. Then refresh the page, and there. We can immediately see the underline is gone, but when I hover, the line through set as the hover text decoration appears. And it's also present on the active menu item as indicated by the option's name. It encompasses both the hover and the active text decoration. Okay, I'll set this back to no, and quickly go through all these other options to restore them back to their original values. Give me a moment. There, save changes. And let me refresh the page to check that it's okay. Perfect, it's all back. Now we can look at the next option, the margin left-right. This lets us add more space between our menu items. I'll set 50 pixels and each item will get a margin of 50 pixels to its left and its right side, excepting the outermost sides of the menu. Let's take a look at it in action. Refresh the page, and there, the items are set further apart. Okay, I'll remove the value, there, and save. Then refresh. Alright, the menu is back to how it was. So next, I'll add the same value to this option, padding left-right. Okay, and save. Then refresh. Now we have a padding to the sides of each menu item. Although this looks a lot like the margin left-right option, with this one we can add space to the outer bounds of the menu rather than just between its items. Okay, I'll clear this now, and save. Moving on, the next part in the options is for the second level menu typography. As you can see, the options look pretty much the same as the ones we have for the first level menu typography. Only these apply to, let me show you, this drop-down. I only have one drop-down and one item within it, but it'll serve to give you an idea of the options effects. And to do that, I'll make a few changes, namely for the colors, so we can see what they would look like. I don't want to waste your time by going over all the options in depth, so I'll be quick with this. Save and refresh. Now when we look, the item in the drop-down shows its new color as well as the hover color. I admit I set the active color by rote as I don't have any other items that would serve as a comparison to the active one. Okay, I'll reset all these now. Just a sec. There, and save changes. This brings us to the last tab we have in the header options, the scroll appearance settings. It has one option that's currently set to none. It means the header won't do anything when you scroll away from or to it. As you can see, nothing happens. The header stays in its place at the top of the page. But we can change this. If I switch the setting to fixed, then just a sec, refresh, and when I start scrolling, the header will be stuck to the top of the page no matter how I move. Okay, besides fixed, we have a third option, and that's sticky. Activating this one gives us some additional options. But first, let's see how it looks. Save changes and refresh. Sticky is this behavior where the header sticks with me when I move across the page. The difference between that and fixed is that sticky doesn't appear immediately. But before we get into that, let's look at what options we have for the sticky header. So the first option is the sticky header height. It's set to 100 pixels, but I'll change that to 150 so we can see the difference. Save, and then refresh. And I need to move for the sticky header to appear. Here it is with its height increased. Please keep in mind though that these settings will appear when the header activates its sticky behavior. Otherwise, the header will show its regular settings. Okay, I'll reset this and save. Then we have the sticky header appearance. The setting right now has the sticky header appearing when scrolling either up or down. However, you can change that so the header appears only when scrolling upward. Let me show you what that looks like. Save changes and refresh the page. Okay, we have the regular header at the top and we need to start scrolling for it to display its scroll behavior, which is sticky on scroll up. And you can see that. It doesn't show when I scroll down, but it pops up when I scroll up. So the header appears depending on my movement on the page. Again, when you're at the top of the page, the regular header will still be there. Alright, I'll put this back. After this, we have the sticky header side padding. I'll set 100 pixels to show you, and save. Oh, we also have the sticky scroll amount. This is how much you need to scroll before the sticky header appears. Right now it appears after passing 500 pixels from page top. I'll change that to 800 and let's see how that looks like. And before I refresh, this is about where the header appears. Now let's look at it with the change. And I start scrolling, the header appears once I've reached further down the page. And thanks to the padding I set, it has an additional 100 pixels on each side of its content. Alright, I'll reset these two options. After this, we have the sticky header background color option. I'll just replace the default color with this orange one so we can see how things look. And while I'm at it, I'll set a color for the sticky header border. Say this one. And to make the border visible, I'll need to set the border width. 2 pixels is fine. And finally, the border style offers the same settings we've seen elsewhere. Since the default setting is solid, I'm happy leaving it this way. And save. Then refresh. Alright, now when we look, the header appears with its new orange background and this thin blue border underneath it. Okay, I'll clear this. Just a sec. Okay. There. And we have one last option, the sticky header box shadow. Just like the shadow before, you need to add multiple values that will define the shadow. I'm going to set it so it appears only at the bottom of the header. There. It's going to have a surface of 20 pixels and it'll be black. Okay, save changes and refresh the page. Now when I start to scroll, the sticky header appears, but now it has this shadow at the bottom. And this is all there is to the header theme options. We covered all 3 tabs. So now I'll restore the scroll appearance to none and save. Alright. Before we move on to the next section in the global theme options, I still owe you a demonstration of the various header layouts you get with the Qi theme. So back to the General Settings tab, and I'll switch to the first of these available layouts. That's the centered header layout. Let's see what it looks like. And refresh. Here it is. The centered header type has put my logo at the top center. And it's a bit squished, but you'd adjust that using the logo height and logo padding options. And the menu and widgets are right below it, also centered. So that's that. The next header layout is minimal. Let's take a look at that one. And then refresh. And here we are. The minimal header lives up to its name. It has the widgets on the right and the logo on the left, across from the widgets. Now let's see the last option for the header layout before I get back to this, because I'll be using the minimal header layout to show you the full screen menu. Before that, our last header layout, the vertical. Save changes and refresh. Here it is. The vertical header, as its name suggests, is vertically aligned and set here on the left. Alright, I'm going to set the layout back to minimal as I promised. Save changes. Now let's check the page. Alright, we're set. While the minimal header layout has some options for adjusting it here, they are pretty much the same as the ones we went over with the standard header layout, so I won't waste your time by going over them again. Instead, let's take a look at the section with the full screen menu options. It has 2 tabs within it, General Settings and Full Screen Menu Settings. The first thing we can do here is disable the full screen menu in grid option. Right now it's set to be in grid. Let me open the menu so I can show you. Right, when we look at it, the items are too short to occupy the full width of the grid, but we can tell it's in grid from its starting point on the left. It's not at the edge of the page. Now, if we go back to the options and switch this to no, let's see what the menu would look like then. Refresh the page. And when we open the menu, the items are still too short to stretch as far as they're allowed, but their position shows a change, which, by the way, can be made using the menu alignment option we'll see shortly. Let me put this back now. Then we can enable hiding the logo with the full screen menu. When we look at the menu now, the logo is very faint since it's white on a very light background. So before I hide the logo, I'll change the menu background color so we can see it in the first place. This one will work. Save changes. Now refresh. And let me open the menu. There now. The logo in my full screen menu is clearly visible. So now, if I switch this option to yes to hide the logo, save, and refresh, I need to open the menu. There. The logo is gone. Alright, let me clear this and reset this. Afterward, we have the background image option. I'm going to set one to show you. I'll use the same pattern image from before. Then we have several image-related options, such as the ones we covered when exploring the header options. So instead of repeating the explanations, I'll just quickly make adjustments so the image covers my menu, and save changes. Then refresh. And now when I open the menu, the image covers the screen and we can see the menu items on top of it. The logo is still there too, only it's very hard to spot. Okay, let me remove the image now and restore these settings to how they were. After this, we have the menu alignment option. It's set to left by default and it's why all our menu items are on the left. Let's see how it would look if I switched it to the right. Save. And refresh. And now when I open the menu, there. The items are on the right side and since they are still in grid, they aren't pushed all the way to the edge. Okay, I'll set this back to the default. Moving on, we have a field where you can add SVG that would serve as your menu opener instead of the hamburger icon we have by default. And you can do the same with the closing icon if you don't like the X that's there by default. Whether you add an SVG icon or not, in the next section you can adjust the full screen menu icon styles. The first part relates to the menu opener icon, so we can pick its color. I'm going to set orange instead of the default white. Then for hover color I'll set green, and I'll change the icon size to 30 pixels, which will enlarge the icon, and save changes. Then refresh the page, and there. The icon is orange and bigger than it was, and hovering shows the green I set. Alright. Besides these changes, we can set an icon side padding, so it applies to all sides of the icon. I'll put 2 pixels for it, and save. Then refresh. And now when we look, we have more space around the icon, but it has also shrunk because the padding we set for it has pushed it inward from all sides. Okay. I'll reset the last few options now. Just a sec. This too. Okay. There. Now the next row contains options for the close icon styles. The options themselves are practically the same except they affect the close icon. So I'll set a different icon color again, a new hover color too, and I'll increase the icon size. Let's see what that looks like. Before I refresh, I'll open the menu and this is the default close icon. So when I refresh, it will change. Just a sec, open the menu, and there, the icon is bigger than it was and shows its new colors both on hover and when normally displayed. Okay, the other options for the close icon are the top position and the right position. These are quite handy as they let you move the icon. Let me show you on the page. You can move it away from the top of the page or its right edge. So the value we add for the top position will create space above the icon. I'll put 80 pixels for this and we need to define whether this will be in pixels or percentages. I'm using pixels. Okay, and I'll set the same for the right position too. There, save changes. And refresh. Now when we open the menu, the close icon has shifted position to be further from the top and the right sides. Okay, I'm quickly going to restore the original values for these options now. One moment. There, and we have 2 more options in this tab, responsive top and responsive right position. These work just like the 2 position options above them, only these apply to narrower screens such as those on tablets. And this was the first tab of the full screen menu options. We have a second tab too. In the full screen menu settings, we can adjust everything connected to the menu items and their style. So that would be these items here. And we have some typical typography options for that. I won't bore you by going over everything in detail. Instead, I'll quickly make a few adjustments and we can see what they would look like. Save and refresh. Open the menu, and here we are. The color of the items, the main color, is orange. The active color, the one showing the page we're on, is red. And the color when we hover is green. Okay, I'll clear these new color settings. And then, similarly to before, I'll just go through the next few options quickly and make adjustments since we already know what these options do, and then we can see how they turn out. And I'll stop before the last two options. We'll take a look at them a bit later. So, save changes and refresh. Open the menu. And there, the colors are restored, but the new styles and decorations are there, as well as the new larger font and its increased weight. Now, the plain decoration is an underline, and the hover decoration is a line through. Given that, if I go back to the options and enable the Draw Hover Active Text decoration and refresh, then open the menu, we now have this animation that works with the decoration on hover and the active item while the plain decoration gets entirely ignored. Alright, let me quickly go through these options and restore them to their original values. There, and save changes. Then refresh the page. Let me check the menu. Okay, it's back. And we've come to the last option here, the margin top bottom. We've seen how margins work by now, so I'll just say that you can add one value and have the same amount of pixels applied to both the top and the bottom of each of your menu items. Or you can add two values and then the first will be the top margin and the second will be the bottom margin. I'll do the former and add 70 pixels. Save and refresh. Now when we look at the menu, there, the items are spread further apart thanks to the margins between them. Okay, I'll clear this. And below these options, we have virtually identical ones that apply to second-level menu items or sub-items. So this is for any menu items that would have been in a drop-down if we were looking at anything other than a full-screen menu. The options work the same as the ones we have for the first level, so there is no need to cover them again. Then the section below this one has settings for the full-screen menu on different screen widths. The first part is for screen widths matching or under the width of a landscape orientation on tablet. And the second part is for the landscape orientation on mobile phones and smaller widths. Okay, with that we've wrapped up the full screen menu options. I'll just hit save changes before we move on, just in case. Since we covered this, I can go back to the header options and restore the original header layout I was using, the standard, and save. Then let me check the page. Okay, it's back. Since we're already on the topic of menus and headers, let's take a look at the mobile header options next. These allow you to make settings to your header that will appear when it's viewed on mobile. For starters, we have the menu header layout option. The standard one is enabled by default, but you can change that to minimal. I have a tab with a mobile display, so let's take a look at it. This is how the standard header layout looks on mobile. The menu opens with a hamburger icon and we can see the logo above it. Now, if we switch this to the minimal, save, and refresh, the minimal is tighter, so it takes up less space, and when we open the menu, it acts like the full screen menu. And by the way, you can adjust the header height and the logo position, it doesn't have to look this squished. So, speaking of adjustments, let's take a look at what options we have for the mobile header. But first, I'll switch back to the standard layout and save. Okay, the first section has options for styling the opener icon for the menu. We have the color, I'll use this one, the hover color, I'll set this one, and the icon size where I'll enlarge the icon. And let's take a look at it now. Oh, wrong tab. Here we go. Refresh. Alright, the icon is orange, larger, and when I click to open the menu, it turns green on account of its new hover color. So, all pretty straightforward options, which I'll reset now so we can proceed to the settings for the header itself. Now, the header settings include adjusting the header height. I'll change it to 150 pixels. Then I'll add more padding to the content sides. Okay, save changes and refresh. There now. The header is larger and the padding has pushed the header content closer to the center. Alright. I'll restore the original settings. After this, we have the header background color. I'll replace the original one with this orange, just so we can see the difference. And I'll add the header border color too. This will work. Then I'll set the width to 2 pixels. And the border style can stay default, it's solid. So let's see how the header will look with all this. And whoops, wrong tab. And refresh. There's my header with its new color and border. Alright, let's see about the rest of these options. We have the drop-down background color. I'll set this one so it matches my header's new look. And then we have the drop-down box shadow. Like before, since I have this example, I'll use it to show you how the shadow might look. And paste. Then finally we have the header drop-down bottom border color. And I can use this option to set a color for the border that would appear under the drop-down. I'll set this green, for example. And save. Then refresh. Now when we open the menu, there. We have the green border under it, a shadow, and the drop-down background color matches the header. Okay, I'll go back through the options now and restore their default settings. Just give me a moment. And I'll set the original color back here. Then save changes. And refresh the mobile view to check. Perfect. It's back and the menu too. Now the mobile header options contain a second tab, and that is for the mobile menu settings. The options here work exactly like the menu settings we saw while exploring the header options. You can use these to style your menu, change its font, color, size, and so on. There is also a section with options for adjusting the second level or drop-down menu items. But since we already covered the set of menu options while looking at the header, I think we can move on to the next section of the global theme options. Still, before we do that, there's one last thing I need to set back, and that is the menu item I shifted to get myself a drop-down in the first place. So I'll just shift the contact page further left, and in doing so return it to a first level menu item, and save menu. Alright, perfect. Then we can head over to the Elements section, as I skipped it while showing you the different menus and headers. The Elements options help us adjust our site forms and the various parts that make them up, such as labels and input fields. These options can help you with your search, comment, or contact forms, or anything in between. So, those bits of your site you didn't add yourself via Page Builder and aren't sure how to edit? Well, come down here and you might find your answer. But if you add a form to your page using a page builder, then you should customize it with that page builder's options. Basically, if you want to create a uniquely styled form, you can use something like the Contact Form 7 widget, which is part of our Qi Addons for Elementor plugin. You get this plugin with the Qi theme and it's free like the theme itself. You can use it to style any contact form you create within the Contact Form 7 plugin directly on the page using the widget options. So, to help me show you the effect these options can have, I'll be using the contact form that I got with this demo. It's located on the contact page, and this is what it looks like. A pretty straightforward contact form. Now, this is a form made with the Contact Form 7 plugin. So, for forms like that, you also have this section where you can adjust the look and style of the different parts that make up the form, such as labels and input fields. And the settings you make in the Contact Form 7 section can differ from the ones you make in the Elements section. This section is considered more specialized, while the elements are more global. So, more specialized settings can be used to make exceptions to more global settings. One more thing I want to note. You don't have to use the Contact Form 7 section at all. If you prefer keeping all your site forms uniform, then you can make your changes within the Elements section. And that will be that. Alright, without further ado, let's take a look at the options here. The first section of the options is for styling labels. Labels are the text that accompanies input fields. I'll just bring this closer first. Okay. So this here is a label, as are these two below it. So, in terms of things you can change, we have typical typography options. The first is the label color. I'll replace the default one with this red, for example, and I'm going to run through the rest of them making changes just to show you the effect these options can have. Okay, there, and save. Then refresh, and here we can see the changes I made. The new font family, font size, font color, and so on. So, as I said, these are pretty typical and easy to work with typography options. I'm just going to restore all these settings back to their default values. There. Save changes. Then below this, we have a section dealing with the style options for input fields. Now, in my case, the input fields, let me refresh the page, these fields in the form and some of the options we'll be looking at affect the field's content too. So I'm going to leave this test here as I needed to demonstrate some of the options. The first one we have is the color. It's the color of the text that I typed in. Right now it's black and I'll change it to this red so we can see the difference. And I'll also change the focus color to green. I'll explain that in a moment. Then I'm going to set a light gray for the background color and a darker gray for the background focus color. Okay, save changes and refresh the page. Alright, we can see the input fields are now light gray, and when I click on one, it comes into focus by switching to the dark gray I set for my background focus color. And the rest of the fields, which I'm not working in, remain light gray, or simply not my focus. And when I start typing, the focus color for the text appears. So you can have a focus color for the field and for the text within the field. Your focus color is like your active color. And we can see the regular text color when we switch to another field. The text shows the red I set as I'm no longer working on it. Okay, let me clear this, and I'll reset all the color settings. After this, we have two more color options, but these are for the border. It's regular and it's focus color. But first I'm going to save the changes and refresh the page I'm working on. With the default look restored, the border is easier to see. It's this thin line framing the field. And if I click, the border turns darker, as the border focus color is a darker gray than the regular border color. But let's see how things look if I change the colors. I'll remove this and set red for the regular color, and change the focus color to green. While I'm at it, I can increase the border width to 2 pixels. Then we have the border radius option. This is what lets us curve the corners of the input fields, much like the fields here in the back end. I'll set 20 pixels for this. Finally, we have the border style option. The default setting is solid, but I'll switch it to dashed, and save changes. Then refresh. And here it is. The border is now dashed and has its corners softened by the radius option. It also shows the red color I set, and when I click, it switches to the focus color. Alright, I'll go back to the options and quickly restore the default settings. There, and save. Then let me refresh the page too. Okay, we got the original look back. I'll type in test again because we'll be looking at the typography options next. Okay, so at the top we have the color options, which include the regular and focus text color. And at the bottom we have the usual typography options. I'm going to quickly make a few settings so we can see how the changes affect the text on the page. Just a moment. Alright, there. And save changes. Now refresh. And the first thing we notice is that the fields seem larger. But actually this is the result of the 20 pixels of padding that I set. This padding fits within the field's border, but please note it doesn't enlarge the actual field. The amount of space you have for typing in your text remains the same. And ordinarily, as I entered a single value, it would be applied to all sides of the fields. However, the width here doesn't change because the contact form is in a column with a set width, so there's no room for expansion sideways. Okay, and when I start to type, we can see the text is uppercase and uses a different font. Alright, I'll reset all the changes I just made. There. Save. And refresh. Okay, all good. Now, the last part of the form is the Submit button. The button we see matches the demo I'm using, but that can easily be changed thanks to the next section of the Elements options. And here they are, the button styles. As we've seen so far, the settings start with options for adjusting the colors. So there's this text color and the text hover color. Then we have the button background color and the button background color on hover. And following those, we have the border color and border hover color. To start us out, I'm going to quickly change the settings for all these colors as well as the border width and radius. Alright, let me hit save and then we can see how all this looks. Refresh. And here's my changed button now. Both the background and the text colors are different, the button changes on hover and it has the radius of 20 pixels that I set for it. There's also a thin orange border around it, but given that I only set it to be 1 pixel wide, it might be a bit hard to spot. Still, you can see it around the button. Okay, I'll reset all the colors now, just give me a moment while I get through all the options. Alright, save, and let's check the page. Great, the original button is back. Now we can take a look at the next option, and that is the box shadow. This option allows us to add a shadow around the border, but to do that we need to add several different values to this field that will define the shadow. There's vertical offset, horizontal offset, then shadow blur and shadow spread. Finally, we need to set the color. Let me save, and then we can take a look at the page. Refresh, and here it is. There's a light gray shadow around the button. The vertical and horizontal offset values were small, so the button seems to be casting a shadow, as you can see here. Okay, I'll clear this. This is followed by the usual typography options, which I'll quickly adjust so we can see what a change might bring. You should already be familiar with options like these, but we're going to see them now in the context of a button. And now we've reached the padding. You can see it has two values. The first for the top and bottom sides of the button, and the second for the left and right sides of the button. You can also set one value and have it apply to all 4 sides, or set 4 distinct ones clockwise from the top. Okay, let me save this now and we can go take a look at the page. Refresh, and there. By increasing the padding and the font size, I increase the button, which also shows its new text, font, style, weight, and so on. Okay, I'll quickly restore the options I just changed. Give me a moment while I put everything back. And save. Below all these, we have a section for button icon styles. You'd use these options if you added an icon to your button and you want to customize it. Another optional section is the button textual styles, and it's something you'd use if you opt for a button with a textual layout. Since my button is filled rather than textual, these options won't have any effect on it. And underneath this, we have the slider arrow styles. These are fields where you can enter SVG for icons that would represent your navigation on elements like sliders and carousels. They are accompanied by options for styling those icons. However, since the demo I'm using right now doesn't have a convenient portfolio section or something like that, this doesn't mean much to me right now. And the same goes for the pagination arrow size options as well, and any icons that may accompany them too. Alright, with that we covered the most important part of the Elements options, so we can carry on to the next section of Qi Themes Global Options, the title section. In here we can enable the page title. The page title is, let me first refresh the page so we get the proper button back. The page title is this area here. It's currently made up of this title and the image underneath it. Please note this is separate from the header, but because the header is transparent here and shows the background image, these seem like one unit. They are not. These options we'll be looking at are for customizing the title area alone. So, for starters, you can opt for a different title area layout. Standard is the one we have right now, but we can change that to breadcrumbs. Save and refresh. Okay, now my page name is much smaller, and we can see the breadcrumbs. In a way, they show the path to the page you're on. Okay, I'll switch this back. And save. Next, we can put the title area in grid. We can see it's enabled right now, and it forces the content to fit the 1300 pixels I have for the grid. Let me illustrate. I'll scroll down to the text alignment option and switch the setting from center to left and save. Then refresh. Okay, now my title area layout is back and its content is pushed as far left as the grid allows it to be. So with this set, if I go back up and switch the page titling grid to no, then save changes and refresh, there. The content has shifted closer to the edge of the page as it now has the full width available to it. However, it's not stuck to the very edge as I have some content padding set by default. Okay, I'll set this to yes again. Then we have this option for determining the title area height. By default, we have 500 pixels, and that is this height here, from the bottom of the header to the end of the image. Even though we can see the image stretching all the way to the top of the page, it's there because the header is transparent, not because it's become subsumed under the title area. Okay, I'll reduce this to 300 pixels and save. Then refresh. And here, the title area is notably shorter now. Okay, I'll put it back and save. Then, accompanying this option, we have the height on smaller screens, where we can set the title area height on screens that also use the mobile header. Let me show you what it looks like now. I'll refresh the page so we get the original look back, and then right-click, go to Inspect, and click on the device toolbar. Then I can minimize this, and our view shows how the contact page would look on mobile. And it's much easier now to recognize the title area surface by looking at the image since the header is different. So now, if I go back to the options and set 300 pixels here, my title area will shrink. Let's see it. Refresh. And there, it takes up a lot less space now. Okay, since we've seen that, I'll close the DevTools now and this will restore my view. There. And I can go back and clear the value I added. Okay. Carrying on, we have the title side padding for both regular and mobile display. I'm going to set 100 pixels here so we can see how it would look like. By the way, you can also use percentages here if you prefer to. Save. Then refresh. And okay, the title has shifted to the right by 100 pixels. Keep in mind, I have the title and grid option enabled, so the padding shift starts from the grid edge. Okay, I'll clear this. The option on the right does the same thing, just for mobile displays, so I think we can safely move on to our next option. And that is the background color. Please note, you can't use a background image and a background color at the same time. I mean, you can, but the color won't be visible. So, if I want to use a color, and I'll set this one, for example, then after setting it, I need to click here to remove the image. Save changes, and refresh. There. My title area has a solid background color in the shade I picked. Okay, I can clear this now. And then restore the image. Since it's already in my media library, I just need to select it. There. And if you're using an image, you can choose the background image behavior. We have the default and we have set responsive image. Let me refresh the page so we're reminded what the default setting looks like. So this is it. The image shows the title height we set. And if viewed on different screens, it will retain that height while being proportionally cropped to fit different screen widths. Now, if we switch to set responsive image and save changes, then refresh, and there, the image adjusts so it can fit different device screens. We can see that even more clearly if we open the DevTools and then set the view to responsive, so we can shift it. And then start expanding it. Now it's clear to see how the image adjusts both in height and in width to all these different views. So that's the set responsive image setting. I'll close this now and restore the option to its default. After this, we have the bottom border color. I'll set red for this and put 2 pixels for the width. As for the bottom border style, I'm going to use dotted. Okay, now save changes. Then refresh the page. And there it is. My new border is at the bottom of the title area with all the settings I made. Alright, I'll remove it now by clearing the settings. Okay, after this we have some typography options for the title. To start with, there's the title color. By default it's white, and I'll change it to yellow. Then the title tag is set to be H1, but I'll switch that to H4 just so we can see the difference. Following that, we have the text alignment. We looked at it earlier, so all I'm going to do now is restore its setting to center and save changes. Then refresh. Alright, there's my title, differently styled because I switched its tag to H4 and it's right in the middle. So that's just one example. I'll reset this now. Just a sec. There, save. And we've come to the last option in here, the vertical text alignment. By default, it's set to align to the center of the top area's height. And that height is considered either from the bottom of the header or from the window top. The setting right now is from window top. Let's take a look at what that is. I'll just refresh first. Okay. So, as I said, the text is in the center point between the bottom of the title area and this point here, the window top. But if we switch this to align vertically from the bottom of the header, save changes, and refresh, there, the title is lower because it considers the height from the bottom of the header, hereabouts, to the bottom of the title area. So this is still in the center of the available height, but that height is different depending on which setting you pick. Alright, I'll return this to how it was. Save changes, and refresh the page to get the original look back. And that's it for the title section of the global theme options. Carrying on, the next section in line is the one for the sidebar. However, I'll be skipping this for two reasons. One, my current demo isn't using a sidebar. And two, these options are covered in a separate video. You can find them addressed in both of our videos on the Qi Themes global blog and shop options. So I will jump straight ahead to the footer section. And the footer on my demo is all of this here. It consists of the top footer area and the bottom footer area. Now, going back to the global footer options, the first one lets us choose whether our footer will be enabled at all. If you disable it, your footer will disappear. Let me show you. Refresh. And then when we look, there's nothing after my page content. I'll reactivate this. Okay, and save changes. Our next option is for picking the footer area widget skin. It's set to white, but we also have the options of switching it to light or the default, which is dark. If we look at the page, I'll refresh. The footer content is white because we have white as the widget skin setting. And when we hover over something, it gets a bit shaded. This change is encoded within the widget skin settings. So let's see how it looks with the other skins we can set. And we can start with the default, which, as I mentioned, is actually dark. Refresh the page, and there. The content is grayish now, and hovering over it turns it black. So this is the one aspect of the skins that you should remember. Just as the white skin was set for a dark background, the dark skin should be set on a light background. This is done to ensure a good contrast, which improves visibility. Okay, let's take a look at the light one now, and save. Then refresh. And now we have this light gray for our content color. Something between the original white and the dark we just saw. And this light skin, as it's intended to go on dark backgrounds, turns white on hover. So it maintains decent contrast. Still, the best thing for my black background is to go back to the white skin. Okay. Then we have some settings for the top footer area. The footer top area actually contains most of the content on my demo. It's all of this here. And this bit underneath belongs to the footer bottom area. So right now we're just looking at the options for the top. And the first one is for picking whether the content will be set in grid or not. Since it's enabled, my content is set in grid, and this is what it looks like. All my footer content fits within 1300 pixels, which is the width of my grid. To give your footer content more space, you can disable this, and it will make the content stretch full width. Let's see it. Refresh. And there, my content stretches a lot closer to the page edges now. Okay, now that we've seen it, I'll put this back. Then save, and refresh the page to get the original look back. Alright, there it is. Our next option will involve these spaces between the columns, and that option is called the Top Footer Area Grid Gutter. Here we have a selection of settings to choose from, anything from no space or 0 pixels to an enormous space of 60 pixels. Let's try this largest setting and save. So before I refresh, this is the default space, and then after I hit refresh, we can see how the space increased. The columns have more space between them, but they've become narrower because they still have to fit the width of the grid. So keep that in mind when making your settings. I'll put this back. Then we have the Top Footer Area Columns option, which we can use to change the number of columns the footer will have. That number can be anything between 1 and 6. For this demo, I'm using 4. After that, we have the Content Alignment option. There are 3 settings and the default one is left, and the remaining ones are center and right. Let's check out the center setting. Save changes and refresh. There, the content of all columns has become centered. Let me put it back. Now we've come to the section with the Top Footer Area Style options. They include things like the padding, and there are several options for different sides of the footer. I'll increase the padding top and padding bottom by 50 pixels so we can see what the change might look like. Save. And now before I refresh, this is my original top padding, and this is the original bottom padding. This one just goes down to the bottom footer area, not to the very end of the page. Okay, let's see it now with a change. And there. We have a lot more space both here and here given the changed padding values. Alright, I'll restore the original ones now. There. Our next option is for the side padding. This allows us to add more space to each side of the content. Let me demonstrate. 50 pixels will do. And save. Then refresh. And if we look at the sides of our content, now we can see that they've gotten further away from the page edge. Alright, I'll clear this. Next, we have the background color option, which we can use to change the footer's background. I'll replace the old one with this red, for example, and save changes. Then refresh. And there, a simple color change, which also helps us to see where the footer top ends and the footer bottom begins. I'll restore the original color now. Besides that, we can also set an image as the background option. I'll set one with a pattern to give you an idea of what it might look like. Save. Then refresh. And there, you can get something like this if you opt for an image instead of a color for your background. I'll remove it now. Okay, after that we have some border options. The first one is the top border color. I'll set, say, this. Then give it a width of 3 pixels. And for the style, I'll set dashed. You need to set all 3 of these things for the border to become visible. Now save changes. And refresh. If we look, there's our border. Just as the footer content, the border is also in grid. It doesn't stretch full width. Okay, now that we've seen it, I'll remove these border settings. And after that, we have the widget's margin bottom option and the widget's title margin bottom option. I'll show you this one first by increasing this value to 55 pixels. And save. Then refresh. And here we are. The widget's margin bottom allows us to add more space under each widget. So this is one widget, this is another, and this yet another. And between each of them we now have 55 instead of the default 15 pixels. Okay, I'll restore the original setting and we can look at the widget's title margin bottom option. With it, we can add more space under the widget's titles. So let me show you on the page. This is a title. And with the widget's title margin bottom option, we can add more space under it to increase the gap between it and the content. And we have another title that we can separate here and here. So now if I increase this value to 50 pixels and save changes, then refresh, now when we look, each widget that has a title has had that title separated from the rest of the content with a gap of 50 pixels. Okay, I'll put this back. And with that, we've reached the section with the bottom footer area options. Just like with the previous section, our first option is for disabling the content in grid, if that's something we want to do. Let's see what it would look like. And refresh. Now if we look, the bottom footer content has automatically shifted closer to the page edge as it's no longer constrained by the grid. Alright, I'll reset this. The next option is for setting the bottom footer area grid gutter. As this serves to adjust the space between columns of content and my demo is using only one column, this won't do much for me. Below this option is the one you can use to adjust the number of columns you want to have in your bottom footer area. This can be anything between 1 and 3. Then there's the bottom footer area columns width. You can enter a value here in pixels or percentages if you want to be precise about limiting the width of your column or columns. Let me show you. I'll set 300 pixels here so we can see what will happen. And now when I refresh, there, the content of the footer bottom is now in 2 lines as the 300 pixels I set is too short for it to remain in a single line. Also, the column automatically got centered, but our next option can help us fix that. I'll clear this first. Okay, and now we can take a look at the content alignment option. We can choose from these familiar settings. The default one is left, but I'm going to switch it to the center so we can try the option out. Save changes and refresh. Here we are. The content is right in the middle of the bottom footer area, and I'll put it back. This brings us to the bottom footer area styles. Again, these options are quite similar to what we had for the top footer. I'll increase the first 2 options, padding top and padding bottom, by 50 pixels each. And save. Then refresh. And here, the footer bottom became taller because I added padding above and below its content. Alright, I'll restore these settings. Next, we have the side padding. I'll set 50 pixels for this. Save. And refresh. Now when we look, the content is drawn inward, away from the grid edge, thanks to the side padding I set. This padding is also present on the right side of the content, but it's not noticeable as my content is too short for us to see the difference. Okay. Following this, we have the background color option. I'll remove the old one so I can set something different, like this. Save changes, then refresh the page, and there it is. Okay, I'll return to the original color. And after this, we have some border settings. As I said before, you need the color, the width, and the style for the border to become visible. So I'm setting all 3 at once and save. Then refresh, and there's my border, dividing the top and bottom footer areas. Also, it's in grid like my content. Alright, I'll quickly reset this. And save changes. Okay, with that we've covered all the footer options. So we can proceed to the next section, and that is the search. Okay, here are our options. Let me show you the search form I have on my demo. It's at the top of the page, here in the header. We can see the icon, which when clicked on opens a search form. And you can close the form by clicking on this X here. Alright. In terms of options, we have the search area background color. It's easier to show you than explain, so I'll cut the old color and set a new one. Then save and refresh. Now we need to open the form. And here it is, the new search area background color. I'll reset the setting here. There. Next, we have the search border color. As with any border, I need to set the following options together if I want the border to appear. Okay, save changes. Now let's see how it looks. When I open the form, there it is. This red line underneath is the border. Alright, I'll clear this. And the width setting too. Then we have the search open icon SVG path. This in the field is the SVG representing my demo's icon for opening the search form. And this icon design is custom for the demo I'm using. You might have something different or even an empty field with a different demo. And I have the same situation with the close icon. Now, the SVG in these fields serves to give the icons a form, but you can style that form using the options below. The first section is for the open icon styles and the bottom section is for the close icon styles. However, the thing with my icons is that the SVG gave them their form, and these options can be used to style them, but the demo I'm using has taken advantage of the widget options to do the styling instead. It might seem complicated at first glance, but this is actually a really good example of how you can use different approaches when working. So for my open icon, let me show you, we'll go to Appearance, Widgets. And this is where you can find all your widgets in widget areas. You can locate the widget you want to work on by opening its area first. The one I need is the header widget area. And in here we can see the Qode Search Opener widget. Clicking on it opens the options. There's fewer of them here than in the global theme settings, but we still have some. And they are used to specify the icon color, we can see it's white, and the icon hover color, which is set to be a light gray. Then there's the option to adjust the icon margin if the current setting doesn't suit you. And finally, there's an option to enable an icon label. With this, you'd have an icon that has search written next to it. Although there aren't that many options here, they still allow us to create a distinctly styled look, and one that won't appear anywhere else on the site. That's the advantage of making style settings via the widgets. Okay, let's get back to our global theme options. Yes, I want to leave. There are a few other things I'd like to touch on while I have this handy icon example in front of me. If we look at the SVG used for this open icon, we can see that the icon height and width are already specified here. What that means is that the icon size is fixed. Therefore, if I try to make changes using the icon size option, it wouldn't have any effect as the size is already defined. However, that doesn't stop me from editing the SVG if I wanted to. Another thing that's worth mentioning here is that these typography options, such as font family, font size, and so on, won't have any effect on my demo as the icon doesn't have an accompanying label. But the close icon is a slightly different case. While it also has a fixed size thanks to the width and height specified here, there are other options in this section that we can use for it. So icon size may be out for the count, but the color and the hover color remain. Right now, the icon looks like... I need to open the form first. This is it, my close icon. Its color settings weren't specified via the widget options, which means I can now change the color to show you a different potential look. The current color is white, and the hover color is white too. So I'll set something strikingly different, such as this red and this yellow for the hover color. Then save changes. And let's check the page. I need to reopen the form, and there it is. My close icon is now red, and when I hover over it, it switches to the yellow I set. Alright, I'll restore the original color settings now. There. Below these we have the search input field options. These apply to this here, the field itself as well as the placeholder text and the text someone would enter before running the search, such as... Okay, I'm keyboard smashing, but you get the idea. The first of the options is for setting the color of the text you type in. 6Fs means it's white right now, and we have the same for the focus color. I'll quickly change these so we can see what the difference might look like. Then save changes and refresh the page. Now when I open the form, there. Since the field is active as I'm about to type, we see the green focus color, and it stays that way when I start to type. However, once I click outside the field, the text color switches to red, which is my regular non-focus color. Alright, I'll set these back to white. Now, the following options can be classed as various typography settings. I'll quickly make adjustments to them all, just so we can see something different, but there's no need to cover them in detail as we already examined individual typography options earlier in the video. Now save and refresh. Then when I open the search form again, we can see the change in the placeholder text and also when I start to type. The same typography settings apply. Alright, now I'll run through these options and set them all back to how they were. Okay, save. And with that, we've wrapped up the search section of the global theme options, and we can check out the side area section. By the way, this is the last section we'll be covering in this video. For the remaining ones, the blog and portfolio sections are tackled in separate videos. You can find them in the Qi Theme Global Options playlist linked in the description below. And the Contact Form 7 section is one we've looked at briefly earlier in this video, and it offers a number of options mirrored in the Elements section. So if you need help with that, you can jump back to that part using the timestamps below. Okay, now onto the side area. Before we tackle its options, I want to mention that the side area is another widget area, like the header and the footer, that you get with the Qi theme. And on the front end, it's this. Just like the search form, the side area has an open and a close icon, and you can use all this space to add your content, which would be done with widgets as with any other widget area. As for the options, the first one is for changing the background color. I'll replace the existing one with this and save. Then refresh. Let's open the side area, and there, my new background color has appeared. I'll restore the original one now. Okay, if you're not keen on the color, you can set an image as the background instead. I'll select one from my media library. There, and then save changes. Refresh, open the side area, and there it is. My background is now an image. I'll remove it now that we've seen it. And we can check out the cover background color option. This creates something like an overlay for the rest of your page once you open the side area. I'll show you using this color. And after picking the color, we need to set a degree of transparency for it. Then save and refresh. Open the side area, and there. The cover background color allows us to create this color overlay for the rest of the page, which puts the side area in focus. Also, the transparency we added keeps the page content visible even with this color. Okay, I'll turn this off by clearing the color. Next, we have the padding for the side area content. You can input the padding following this example. The values go clockwise from the top. Or you can input a single value, for example, and have it apply to all four sides. By default, the side area already has some padding. We can see that the content is somewhat distant from the edges of this area. And when I input new values, this will override the default ones. I'll set 100 pixels at the top and 0 for all the rest. And save. Then refresh. Open the side area, and there. With the padding changed, we can see the text content has stretched out to the edges of this area. This is because I set 0 pixels for the sides, but 100 pixels at the top, so my content isn't pushed up against the window top. Okay, I'll remove this. And below it we have the content alignment option. By default, it's set to the center. Let's see what switching it to the left would look like. And refresh. Open the side area, and we can see that my title and text are on the left now. However, the image is still in the center. This is because the image widget has a different setting than the side area alignment option in the global theme settings. And as we've learned by now, the more specialized setting trumps the more general one. Alright, I'll put this back. And then we can take a look at the widget skin option. As with the other two widget areas we've seen, the header and the footer, the widget skin has 3 settings. The one I have right now is white, but we can change that to the setting called default, which is dark, or to light. Let's take a look at the latter. Refresh. And now when we look, the text is more tinted than it was with the white setting. Let's see what the third option, default or dark, gets us. Save. And refresh. Open the side area. We have a much more noticeable change with this. The dark skin has turned my title so dark it's become virtually indistinguishable from the background, and the accompanying text has become more tinted as well. This is a great illustration of why you need to pick skins that contrast your background. With the dark skin, I'd be better off using a white background to keep the content visible. But since my current background is dark, I'll simply switch back to using the white widget skin. After this, we have the side area open icon SVG path. This works just the same as the open and close SVG icons we looked at in the section with the global theme options for the search form. You can see the SVG used for my demo's open icon in this field, and it's the same for this field with the SVG for the close icon for the side area. Below these, we have the options for styling the open and close icons. The icon size option won't work for me as the icon height and width are defined within the SVG path. But there are options that will work for me, and they include the initial icon color, which is white, and I'll replace it with this, red for example. And the icon hover color, which is light gray, and I'll replace it with yellow. And save changes. Then refresh the page. And here we can see the side area open icon. It shows the new color as well as the new hover color I set. Okay, I'll return these to their original settings. Just a sec. There. Then I'm skipping the icon size as it won't work for me, but I can use the background color. To show you, I'll set this red for example, and with it I'll set 20 pixels for the icon side padding, and save. Then refresh, and here it is. The icon has a background color that fills its containing space. I adjusted how big that space is by setting a padding of 20 pixels, so it's a simple way to draw attention to the open icon. I'll clear this now. Okay. Moving on, we have similar settings for the side area close icon, and it has pretty much the same options as the open icon did. So I'll start by setting the color and hover color so we can see what the change might look like. Again, I'll skip the icon size option. Although there is a value here by default, it's not going to affect the icon because I'm using an SVG with predefined values. However, if you replace the SVG with any other icon, then it would be sized at 15 pixels. However, given the SVG I'm using, I'll skip this option and hit save so we can see how the color change looks on the page. Now when I open the side area, there it is. Both the initial and the hover color I set are here. Alright, I'll restore the original settings here. After this, we have the top position option. It lets us set how far from the screen top the close icon will be by setting a gap in pixels or percentages. I'll change this to 55. This is going to be in pixels. When you don't specify, they have the advantage, so to speak. But when in doubt, always take the time to define the value fully. Okay. And we have something similar with the right position option, which lets us set the gap to the right of the icon. I'll set 50 pixels for that one. And save changes. Then refresh. And when we open the side area, the close icon has shifted its position thanks to the spaces we set above and to the right of it. Okay, I'll return these to how they were. Just a sec. Save changes. And with that, we covered all the options for the side area. As I mentioned earlier, the blog options are covered in a separate video. And the same goes for the portfolio options, which are in a tutorial of their own. Finally, we touched on the Contact Form 7 options when we looked at the Elements options. And the options here are virtually the same as those in the Elements, only these count as more specific than the Elements ones. So, as we've said before, more specific options trump the more general ones, which allows you to make different settings to different aspects of your site, while still having an impact on it globally. So this is a wrap. I covered everything I wanted in this tutorial. For anything you're interested in but didn't find in here, you can check out the Qi Theme Global Options playlist where we go through the remaining option sections in different videos with more appropriate demos. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments or suggestions, please drop us a line in the comments below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and be the first to learn about new tutorials and theme guides.